It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
This is really an exciting time. When you're in your 20s, I'm visualizing, I'm going back on, and you have to be self-reflecting. This is the time when you graduate college.
You're an adult, right?
You're first time out on your own. Yep. I mean, so that's kind of, you got an adventure. I mean, that's why I call it the Roaring Twenties, and the world is your oyster.
Okay.
I typed that down, and then I immediately walked around the office. I said, does anybody know where this term came from?
It's like
the world is your oyster.
Something to do with like pearls, right?
It is.
Okay.
And it goes back to William Shakespeare, The Merry Wives of Windsor. And there's actually a violent connotation tied into that, The Merry Wives of Windsor. But what it actually means in life is that an oyster, the bigger the oyster, the more likely that it will have a pearl in it.
Okay.
But the bigger the oyster, the harder it is to open it. You usually have to take like a knife or something and pry it and really work on it to get it open. And it's an analogy of life, that the harder you work, the bigger you want to have things, the harder you have to work, because it's going to take more work to get to that pearl, which is so.
And
okay,
that etymology was for free. There you go.
So that's how. But keeping it going is that this is also a time when you've got to figure out where your place in life is. So the first thing I have, because for the Roaring Twenties, I actually have, 3 of these things that I want to give you. First one is discovering your passions, your career, and what gives you purpose.
Yeah.
And here's a word of caution I want to give most of my young listeners. There is this new tendency where people come out, and because of the internet and technology, we all think we're experts. And I think this is just a natural thing that happens when I was 20. I thought I was an expert too.
Yeah, sure.
But I want to caution you that there is the 10,000 hours to mastery, which is about 5 years of working under somebody, learning your skill set. So make sure you're investing in yourself. Yeah. Make sure you're getting the experience. Go find yourself a mentor. So the first thing is discovering where your passions are and what really brings you happiness, because that's what you want to do for a living.
And this is really the stage in your life where you do have some flexibility to experiment a little bit. You can try a few different things in your early 20s. You don't have to have everything completely figured out, but you do want to make sure you don't let time get away from you, because it becomes much more difficult to make those big life changes later on in your 40s and 50s and that sort of thing.
Exactly. So, and that leads nicely into start saving ASAP. Now, here's the thing. When you're in your 20s, what is more important than the how is really the when.
Okay.
And I want to explain what I mean by this, is because saving money is probably the most powerful thing you can do to build financial independence.
Sure.
And this hit me, what's funny is I've been talking about this concept really since the 90s. I mean, this is when I went on my journey. I still remember, I've told you guys a gazillion times, when I was 18 years old, 17 years old, when I was sitting in that economics class, I had the wrestling coach that was retired military, told me if I'd save $100 a month, I could be rich. And I was like, I can do that.
It's because you were young.
I mean,
you had time on your
and that's
side.
always stuck with me. And every time I talk to high school students, college students, or even 401k enrollment meetings, I tell people all the time that it takes, here's the actual numbers. If you're assuming you're earning 10% a year and you're trying to get to be a millionaire by the time you're 65, a 20-year-old only needs to save $95 a month.
Doable.
A 30-year-old needs to save $264 a month. So I've been giving that data out for years. But let me talk to you about compounding interest deconstructed. Because when I saw this, I was like, holy cow. That's what I need to be telling people. If you do the math on that, if you take that $95 a month, that's 45 years of savings. If you think about it. If you do the math on that, it works out that you've only invested $51,300 in the markets.
Oh, but you said that's how much it took to get to $1 million, right?
So you see where I'm going with this, because we're not going to do that. I'm not going to tell you all I'm just going to tell you 94.9% of the money, that $1 million, is going to come from the growth. That is compounding interest deconstructed. Think about that. I mean, if you can start saving ASAP, 90% of your financial independence is going to come from that army of dollar bills working for you. So you're not working with your brains, your back, your hands. That money's doing it for you. It almost seems like it's free at that point.
Yeah.
How could you not start saving? I brought this up on my Thanksgiving break with my 14-year-old daughter, the 15-year-old niece and nephew. I mean, this is perfect dinner conversation for Thanksgiving.
What else would 14 and 15-year-old girls on Thanksgiving
they were
break
loving it because, and truthfully, it might have been what changes their life. I mean, it only took a book to change mine. That's so hopefully this podcast will be the thing that changes somebody else's life. So if you can start saving ASAP, it really is incredible. So if you think about the Roaring Twenties, between your time you're 20 all the way up to 30, you can have the assets grow for you, provide 90% of your becoming successful by just letting the assets work for you.
And while you could start at $95 a month, that would do the trick. What we say is that you really want to aim for saving 15 to 20% of your gross income. And I would encourage the folks out there that are in this sort of stage, don't get caught up in the minutia. When you're just starting out, your savings rate is exponentially more important than your rate of return. So I wouldn't focus on what you're investing in. Am I buying this stock, selling this stock? Focus on the percentage of your income that you're saving and just go do something real easy like a target retirement fund or something like that.
Great. And here, while you're building these basic skill sets of good financial management, as you talked about the 15 to 20%, something that we don't talk enough about on this show because we assume that you've got the basics because we are beyond common sense, but it is something I think a 20-year-old is important, is understanding how to budget.
Yep.
I mean, so keep a journal, keep an accounting of what you spend on a monthly basis so you can figure out how you can pay yourself first. And we'll get into forced scarcity and other things later.
A journal is a great idea. They also have these things called smartphones that have apps on them now. So you can do the journal thing.
Come on, Marty McFly. Cool. You can't pick on me when you're wearing that.
Well, I've been to the future. I know what's going on out there.
Number 3. Try to avoid these debt roadblocks. And you're going to see a trend that I try to think about during each decade of your life. What are the things that could be roadblocks, debt issues, and other things? And when you're in your 20s, it's student loans.
Yeah.
We talk about this on a lot of the educational podcasts, is that think about when you choose a major in college, your return on investment that you'll get on that, and try not to leave school with a student loan that exceeds the first year anticipated pay. Sure. So if you think you're going to get, have a job that coming out of college will pay you $30,000 to $35,000, try to keep the student loan between below $30,000 to $35,000.
That's great.
Obviously, there's exceptions if you're a doctor or a professional, but still you want to be mindful of avoiding large student loans.
Sure.
The second thing, don't fake it until you make it by doing lifestyle creep with your credit cards. I mean, some people truly lose their mind in their 20s with credit cards and go out there and buy rooms full of furniture, buy all the electronics, and then they're paying for that stuff. And it doesn't allow them to flip the script and let that money grow for you and provide 90% of your financial assets. Instead, you're actually creating that compounding interest effect for the person that lent you the money.
Or how often do we see someone who gets their first job, Brian, and the very first thing they do is not they can qualify for it, they go out and buy a luxury car because now they have some steady income. That's just not the best use of those assets at that time.
Yeah, it's the whole saying. We've talked about it. Live like no one else when you're younger, so you can live like no one else. I mean, Dave Ramsey mentions that, and it's that whole concept of deferred gratification.
So here's your age 20s-ish spot check, right? So if you want to think about peers, the average income for folks in their 20s, your individual income should fall somewhere between $26,000 to $39,000 per year if you're on the average. For that group of people, if you want to be a prodigious accumulator of wealth, which is the Millionaire Next Door formula, which is your age times your annual income times 10%, and then you want to do double that. So multiply that whole number by 2.
It's age by income divided by 10%.
Well, times 0.1 or divided by 10. Same mathematical formula. So what you want your net worth to be is, if you're a single individual, $229,000 by the end of your 20s, and for a married individual, $458,000 by the end of your 20s.
Divide by 10, which I see what you did there. You're smart.
Well,
that's why you get the CFA.
Well, math is kind of a thing.